Hello everybody, James here, and I'm sure you've all heard the news by now. It's probably the most seismic news there's been in decades in professional wrestling. That is right, Vince McMahon has grown a mustache, and it's not even a good mustache, and he seems to, I've posted a photo yesterday on the community board, it looks like, because he's also dyed his hair, and then got this like milk-like brown film over his lip, he looks like he's drunk his own hair dye, but that's by the by. The other big news, and when I say big news, this is the biggest news since probably Vince McMahon actually bought the WWF in 1980 or 81 or whenever he did. So, Endeavor and WWE are going to be the same company, essentially. Endeavor, the parent company of UFC and a load of other things, has officially put out a press release a couple of hours ago as I record this, saying that they're going to be buying a 51% controlling stake in WWE. Does that mean they're only going to be paying 51% of the $9.3 billion that WWE has been valued at, and apparently the Endeavor agrees to, is that is what the value is? We don't know, but anyway, that's just the minutiae. Let's get to the press release now. So, oh, and actually, before I get to the press release, here was something very interesting. So, Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel, on an investors call for Endeavor recently, very much categorically stated that they were not interested in buying WWE whatsoever. So it turns out, like in MMA and wrestling at the same time, you can never ever believe what you hear. Now, from the press release, I'm not going to read it all, I'm going to read the most salient points. Endeavor Group Holdings, Inc. and World Wrestling Entertainment, Inc. today announced that they have signed a definitive agreement to form a new publicly listed company consisting of two iconic complementary global sports and entertainment brands. Now, a couple of paragraphs down, the new company will be led by Emmanuel, that's Ari Emanuel, who I just mentioned, the Chief Executive Officer of Endeavor, who will also continue in his role as CEO of Endeavor, as well as this new company that WWE and UFC will be forming together. But back to the press release, I'll explain that in a minute. McMahon, Executive Chairman of the Board, and Mark Shapiro, who will be President and Chief Operating Officer of both Endeavor and the new company. Now, the new company doesn't have a name yet. Dana White will continue his role as President of UFC, and Nick Khan will serve as President of WWE. The Board of Directors will consist of 11 members who will be appointed at a later date, 6 of whom will be appointed by Endeavor, and 5 of whom will be by WWE. One more paragraph. Together, UFC and WWE expect to deliver an estimated $50 million to $100 million in annualized run rate cost synergies by leveraging, among other things, Endeavor's back office and robust infrastructure. Now, that's business speak for firing a lot of people, but we'll get back to that in a minute. Endeavor also expects significant growth across revenue areas, including domestic and international media rights, ticket sales and yield optimization, event operations, sponsorship licensing, and premium hospitality. Endeavor's success at UFC, including the increased commercial opportunities that have driven more than 2 times adjusted EBITDA growth since its acquisition in late 2016, demonstrates the significant value creation of opportunity and upside potential of having UFC and WWE under one roof. Now, this is maybe a bit of an unusual move, really, that Endeavor's not actually buying WWE outright. They're going to be getting a controlling interest of 51%, with the remaining 49% to be owned of WWE by the existing shareholders. Now, Endeavor will also be splitting off UFC and WWE into their own company, just those two companies, that will be overseen by Ari Emanuel. And at the moment, this parent company, or this new parent company for WWE and UFC, we don't know what the name is, but it will be floated on the stock exchange under the ticker symbol TKO. And that will be in due course as well. We would have a date on that. Other businesses that Endeavor own include a film financing arm, content investment, fine arts, hospitality. Excuse me, I've just eaten me dinner. Hospitality and live event companies, WME and IMG, and other talent agencies, as well as some minor sports leagues, including 9 minor baseball teams, professional bull riders, EuroLeague basketball, and a joint esports venture with Turner. Now, this is from Josh Nason of the Wrestling Observer. The corporate structure will be Ari Emanuel, who was in attendance at WrestleMania Sunday as chief executive of both Endeavor and this new venture. Patrick Whitesell remains as Endeavor executive chairman, while Mark Shapiro remains as president of Endeavor and the new company. McMahon will be executive chairman of the new company, with Nick Khan as president of WWE and Dana White remaining as president of UFC. A new 11-person board will be established. We've already established that. So the press release also suggests that Endeavor will be cutting cost in the office rather than the wrestlers, but maybe the wrestlers as well. Who knows? This is going to be a cost-cutting measure as well as a money-making venture as well. So we will probably be likely seeing quite a number of backroom cuts, more on WWE side, I imagine, rather than Endeavor's, because UFC and WWE are sort of, even though they're different sports and a pseudo-sport, they are the two closest things out there as far as structure, because when Lorenzo Fertitta and the Fertitta brothers and Dana White bought the company for like $2 million something in, I don't know, like 2001 or whatever, Lorenzo actually looked at the WWF's model of producing TV, producing pay-per-views, just the entire business structure of the WWF. So the UFC has a lot to thank the WWF and Vince McMahon for, as far as providing like a template for how a company like that should be run from top to bottom. Now, Vince McMahon will essentially be paid almost $2 billion. So he will be not only an honest-to-goodness millionaire, like he's always stated, but that was always in the company. He will have a personal fortune of something like 1.75 billion when they pay him, plus whatever he's got in the bank as well. So that probably does make him a multi-billionaire now. Unless that is, and I'm no stock person, but unless Endeavor actually is buying the entire company and somehow blah, blah, blah. No, it shouldn't be that. But if Endeavor was buying the entire company, Vince would see something like 3.5 billion in his bank account at the end of it. But Vince, this is really key, is retaining his job with WWE, and he will have almost unlimited power like he did before, almost like he did before, because obviously he was the end-all be-all in WWE before this, and there's now one or two people above Vince who can overrule him. But the other thing, which is great for Vince, especially with all these NDAs and reimbursements and all that kind of thing, and lawsuits that he's had to pay people off, like Rita Marie, it's going to be very almost impossible for Vince to be fired, because as we saw with Dana White recently, with the whole wife-slapping incident, yes, his wife slapped him several times first before Dana White slapped her back, and they were drunk and everything. And they personally got over it very quickly, supposedly. But Dana White didn't even get a slap on the wrist for that. So it looks like Vince McMahon, unless he's going to do like some sort of murder or something terrible on screen or something, it looks like he's got a job for the rest of his life. And even if he is fired, then he'll have, provisions in place where he'll have the old golden parachute payoff, when he's gotten rid of anyway. So he's more than set for life, as if he wasn't set for life beforehand. And other things to mention here is Triple H has not been mentioned at all as Chief Content Officer, so let's hope he stays in the booking side of things, but we don't know. And also Nick Khan is remaining in power, which is very important, and he's also renegotiated himself a great big fat raise from about $5 million to about $9 million per year, including all the bonuses and incentives and all that kind of thing. Now, there were plenty of suitors, and this has been rumoured for years that WWE was going to sell. I mean, originally we were hearing names like Viacom and Disney being thrown around, that kind of thing. And then there were suitors in recent months that when Vince McMahon returned after his 5-6 month, retirement sabbatical sort of thing, Saudi Arabia looked to be the front runner, to the point that many mainstream news outlets were suggesting that Vince had already sold to the Saudi Arabians for whatever amount of money they were saying, 6, 7, 8 billion. And that probably, thankfully, didn't really come to fruition, because I don't think the Saudis would have done anywhere near as good a job as Endeavor. I'll get to that in a minute. But other outfits that were also suggested were like Comcast or NBC. Now, they would have been great choices as far as saving money, because as well as Endeavor, all these other companies are banking on rights fees to fund the lion's share of the revenue coming in for WWE. So, between Raw and SmackDown, you're looking at something like $400 million per year for Raw and SmackDown. And, if NBC had bought it, or Comcast or whatever had bought it, but especially, let's say, NBC, for example, they could just have Raw and SmackDown on NBC stations and then save themselves $400 million plus per year, because keep in mind those rights were negotiated in 2019 and the rights will once again come up for negotiation in 2024, where as expected they will probably go up, as all rights negotiations seem to be going up and up and up. There's got to be a ceiling somewhere, but at the moment we haven't found that ceiling yet. Now, for Endeavor, for me, they're probably the best all-round new owner. Yes, they'll if they want to be on mainstream television or cable television or whatever, they'll still have to, they'll still be commanding lots of money, lots of revenue for those rights to show those shows, and not including international either. But the reason why Endeavour and UFC, as I mentioned before, Lorenzo Fertitta, UFC works quite similar to WWE in its corporate structure in weekly shows and pay-per-views, or special premium events, whatever WWE are saying at the moment. But also, UFC, as I've also said before, is most similar to WWE out there without being in the same business. And let me just have a look what else I've written here. Now, WWE and UFC can be a very powerful package when selling television rights and also for acquiring sponsorships. Now, WrestleMania 39, which has just gone, has been touting, loud and proud about their generating the most amount of sponsorship money for any WrestleMania or any wrestling pay-per-view ever out there. So much so that they even put a Russell Crowe film advertising in the middle of the Hell in a Cell with Edge and Finn Balor last night. That's why there were so many boos for that bit, because obviously it came on the screen, so people were pretty unhappy about that. But also cross-promotion between the two brands. You never know. You could see wrestlers in the crowd, promoting WWE on UFC shows. You could even see MMA, UFC stars coming over to wrestling for a match or an experience or whatever. Plenty of scope for cross-promotion. And this is a big one, is that WWE, and I think Nick Khan may have said this publicly, but someone high up in WWE said this publicly, is that WWE is not averse to bringing back the pay-per-view format. Now, they obviously left the pay-per-view format because they want to put it on the WWE network and bypass all of the fees that someone like Comcast or all these other cable providers charge for them, 50% off the top, essentially, and they got half the money, minus all their expenses, of course. But with UFC working with ESPN Plus, maybe the pay-per-views could come back. Be on ESPN Plus, they could get a much bigger cut of the revenue than they would have done through traditional pay-per-view means. And then people who've got Peacock in the US or WWE Network in the rest of the world, they won't get their monthly pay-per-views for $9.99 anymore. Now, UFC, when it was sold to Dana White and the Fertitta brothers, yes, I've already said all that. UFC, now this is also worth mentioning as well, why Endeavour's a good company, is they were sold to Endeavour in 2016, I believe, about 7 years ago, and they were valued at the time around $4 billion. Now, today, UFC has doubled its annual revenue, and is currently valued at around $12 million. I think it's $12.1 billion. I may have said 4 million, meant 4 billion. So they've tripled their value, essentially, on paper. WWE was asking for $9 billion. Now, they've actually been valued by Endeavour as about $9.3 billion. So they've even gone above and beyond what Vince McMahon was hoping for. And although, excuse me, I've already written all that. Here's one more thing I do need to mention, is that on Friday, the stock share price was $92. And on Monday, now this is 3:30 as I'm saying this, so knock off 5 hours. 10 past 3. Knock off 5 hours is like 10 past 10 in the United States. In an hour and 10 minutes, the stock opened at something like $86, and they're continually falling to about $84 or so as I'm watching it. But as I'm watching it now, $86.62 again. It's bounced back up. It's coming back up to $88. So there you go. I'm not giving you a running total of all these stock prices. You can look at it yourself, but it's quite volatile, as they would say. Now, as of this recording later today, WWE are holding an all-talent, all-hands-on-deck company-wide meeting at the Crypto Arena, Los Angeles, for the Raw taping. And a couple more points I've written down here to mention as well. We also don't know if there will be a change to salary structure in the WWE to match something like UFC, where you basically get paid for fighting and that's it. Because obviously, downside contract guarantees and what UFC are doing are wildly different at this point. But also, it should be noted that when Endeavour bought the UFC, some fighters' contracts and how much they were paid actually went down. And that doesn't include, I think Endeavour bought UFC after the Reebok deal was brought in, and, fighters can no longer have sponsors on their trunks. And that's when a lot of fighters saw a lot of their their revenue just like cut into practically nothing, because Reebok paid absolutely nothing, practically like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 maybe. Now, it also should be noted that Vince McMahon was seen at WrestleMania with a headset on and back to work. So we don't know where this leaves Triple H. We don't know where this leaves Vince McMahon. Is he going to be resuming control of the booking? Is he going to be resuming control of Gorilla? Is he still just sort of half on the sidelines and only producing certain matches or whatever it is? Or can Vince just not help himself and at 77 years old? Or so is he just going to be once again taking over WWE now, especially because he's got possibly one of the greatest deals in business history, as now he's a legitimate multi-billionaire and he still gets to keep his job that he loves and he lives for his job and all that kind of thing. So that's everything I've got to say on that, and that's quite a lot to say as well. I can't even see how much I've been talking here. 15 minutes, 15 and a half minutes. So I'll end on this. I already made a community post about this on YouTube, saying that yes, I know WSI has been not posting too much in the way of new content at the moment. Don't worry, for April or the second week of April, that's all going to change. I've got one interview booked in for tomorrow. I've got two booked in for the weekend after. I've got two booked in for May, the beginning of May as well. So we've got plenty of content and plenty of new faces to see on the channel. So hope you're looking forward to it. And thanks for watching, and I'll catch you for the next monumental bit of news.